Anytime that you want to collect seeds, you want to let your plant really dry out like this.
So you definitely want it like a tree.
Yep,
All right.
absolutely.
I'll give it a shot.
I have 4 varieties of tall bearded iris that didn't bloom this year, so we're gonna see if we can fix that. Here by my shed, I have these 2 beds, and on this side, I have this gorgeous magnolia tree that is getting pretty large and has now shaded some of the plants that I have planted beneath it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dig out these 4 iris. I also have some southern charm verbascum that I grew from seed this year that's looking beautiful that I wanna put in our new bed. So this is where I'm going to be working, and it's pretty tight in here. George is now on the opposite side of the bed, and you can see this quick fire that I have in the corner here is getting enough sun, and it looks absolutely beautiful now with its rosy pink fall color. And so this is doing great. The magnolia is doing great, as is this hardy hibiscus. Because they're on the outer edges, they're getting plenty of sun. All of the stuff in the middle has now become full shade. And as you know, when you have gardens, the plants will grow, and that will require some transplanting and moving around as things mature. And so that is the situation I have going on here. What will stay is columbine, because columbine is a part shade plant. It does really well in here. I also have some astilbe that performs well in here, and some anemones for late season color. So those 3 plants are staying. I have a Sheffield mum that will be blooming next month that also does well. So I am moving out the bearded iris and this gorgeous verbascum. Now I have 4 varieties of bearded iris in here, and they are stunning. I have one called strawberries in champagne, one called Black is Black, and I also have one called Coffee Trader that's a shade of brown, and talking about brown, one called Downtown Brown. Beautiful, and they coordinate so nicely with this verbascum, so I want to move them as a group. So let me go ahead and get these dug up, and I'll show you what to do when you transplant iris. To dig up my iris rhizomes, I used a small shovel, being careful to go around the whole clump and not driving my shovel through the rhizomes, which could damage them. Once I had them lifted, I just shook off the soil. Now these iris were planted in too much shade, which is why they weren't blooming. In order for iris to perform best, they need to be planted in full sun and in a well-draining soil. The best time to transplant or divide your iris is going to be at the end of summer or beginning of fall, and ideally 6 weeks before your first hard frost. Okay, so I have all of my iris rhizomes in my gorilla cart, as well as the southern charm verbascum, also known as mullein, that I want to transplant. Now this is one that I started from seed. I've had it in my garden before. It's a short-lived perennial, so it comes back for 2 or 3 seasons and then it might not return. But because it's so beautiful, I wanted to start some from seed this year using the winter sowing method, and I was able to get about 3 or 4 plants. And I wanted to show you this before I lose all of these blooms. They're a little fragile, so as I move them around, it's probably going to knock off the flowers. But you can see the foliage right here. This one doesn't have blooms yet, so it kind of just looks like a weed. It almost looks like it could be the foliage on a dandelion. But I'm going to put these in a group in that bed, my new bed that I created around the well. And here are my iris. Now, when you want to transplant iris, first you want to dig up your rhizome. And this is what the rhizome looks like. Sort of looks like a potato. It's a tuber, or it's actually called a rhizome, but that's sort of what it looks like. And all of the roots are down below. And to make the transplant easier, what you want to do is take some of this weight off of the top. So these are the fans, and I'm just going to cut them down to about 3 to 4 inches. That's going to make it a lot easier for you to work with this rhizome as you're replanting it, because these will make it top heavy, the fans, and if it topples over with the wind, it'll uproot your tuber. So it's just easier to transplant or plant a piece like this with a shorter fan. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to trim those all off before I move them over. Now, ideally, you want your tubers to be all nice and firm like this. If you dig it up and there's a piece that's mushy, you want to cut that piece off. And you want to disinfect your pruners or scissors, whatever it is that you're using, to cut that piece off with some alcohol or soapy water so that you don't spread disease. But you don't want to plant anything that's mushy, just a nice, firm, healthy rhizome. is where I'm going to put all of my transplanted iris rhizomes. And because they've been planted in that bed by the shed for a couple of years, the tags got misshuffled and they're all mislabeled. I don't know what varieties they are, so I just dug up all of the rhizomes I could find, and I'm just going to place them around this area. So when they bloom, they might be all different and mixed in, but I think that'll be fine. Now, iris bloom at different times, so there might be some that bloom earlier, some that bloom later, but I'm pretty sure that the varieties I had there bloomed roughly around the same time frame. Now, also, because they only bloom for a couple of weeks, I'm going to mix them here in between some of these taller perennials in the middle, because while they bloom, they look beautiful, but then most of the time they just look like these blades of green grass. And so if they're mixed in with other perennials, it kind of disguises them, and you let the other plants that are blooming later shine on their own. So that's my plan. I'm going to go ahead and get down and I can show you how these are planted. One more thing before we replant these iris rhizomes. You might be wondering, why do I have to dig up and divide or move my iris? And really, there's just a couple of reasons. One, you love them so much, you want more in your garden, so you can divide them so you can get more plants. And number two, which is primarily the reason people do this, is because their iris is not blooming as well. And if your iris stops blooming, it could happen for two reasons. One, the clump has gotten too deep where now the rhizome is buried and it is not getting exposed to sunlight and it no longer blooms well. And the other one is that the clump has gotten so large that your rhizomes are really crowded and they need more space in order to provide you with more blooms. So those are the main reasons why you'd want to dig up, divide, and move iris. To replant my iris rhizomes, the first thing I'm going to do is move away my mulch. And you want to make a little mound of soil. Now you can use the soil you have in the ground, but I'm just going to add a little bit of a compost. And you just do a mound like this. And then you want to take your roots and kind of nestle them into that. And you want to sit your rhizome right on top of that mound that you created so that they're making contact. While burying your roots. And once your rhizome is nice and tucked in, you can see that it is at least 1/3 above the soil. You can gently move your mulch back over, but try not to cover that up. That rhizome should be hit by the sun. And then you want to water in your transplant. I had already trimmed the top foliage to make them shorter so that they won't topple over during transplanting, but you can also trim the roots to make it a little bit easier to replant them. That's it. I took off about 1/3. Sometimes when I'm working out here and there's a little bit of downtime before George has to record the next shot for me, he starts looking around, which is not a good thing because he usually finds work for himself. And he's decided that he wants to take off one of these limbs on our eastern redbud. This is a beautiful tree, but it's very top heavy and sometimes it loses limbs in windstorms.
Yeah, so by selectively pruning, I'm just trying to avoid it from self-destructing because it's a nice tree, it just gets way too top heavy. So I'm thinking about taking that limb off. So
yeah, I'll back up so we can get a view and see what it looks like.
I'm gonna go for it regardless. And we'll just see what it looks like.
We'll see what happens. It's gonna grow back, right?
Yep.
Yeah, doesn't really look like anything's missing.
Perfect. All right, I think that was good. I'm gonna take off one more limb. This is it though. Oh, it's just out of my reach.
This tree gets beautiful fall color too. Gets nice and golden yellow.
All right, how we looking?
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. A little thin on the left now. This is what happens, you know?
I know.
A little here, a little there. Now you need to even it out a little. It looks good from here, George. I would say quit while you're ahead. You can't glue it back, you know?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't quit while he was ahead. He kept going, and it actually turned out beautifully, so I'm glad he did. And now he's on to a shrub. And let me show you what a shrub is. So what is a shrub, you ask? It's actually a term I made up for a shrub that I want to train into a tree, a shrub. So this is a royal purple smoke bush, and it can be a large shrub or trained and limbed up into a small tree. And that's what I want to do with this royal purple smoke bush. And because George has no fear with cutting things, I'm gonna let him go at it. He has, what tools do you have, George?
I have loppers and I have my Felcos.
He has, look at this, he has his own pair of Felco tools now, so he is an official gardener with his holster.
So as long as you're okay with whatever I do on this one, just let me go at it.
Yeah.
Then we're good.
We're actually gonna move this royal purple smoke bush this fall from this area to back in the corner there for some red color. So it does need some weight taken off of it. So we're gonna experiment.
So you definitely want it like a tree.
Yep,
All right.
absolutely.
I'll give it a shot.
I'll set up the tripod and we can get a proper before and after. Well, mission accomplished. It looks like a small tree.
Yeah. I mean, I took out probably half of the tree, honestly.
It looks good. I mean, and it is going to grow. This will make it a lot easier for us to transplant.
But you can definitely see it does have that main trunk now. It had a bunch of offshoots here, but yeah, it looks like a tree to me.
It does, yeah. And we can keep playing with the shape as it grows and fine tuning it, but I think it's gonna look really pretty. I've also been working on planting these coneflower that I started from seed using the winter sowing method. I started them back in February. They are the Pow Wow White coneflower. And what I did was I had 12 of them and I kind of planted them in a drift in the front and behind the fountain here. So I have one more to get in the ground. I keep working through Steph's home nursery stash and I'm doing pretty well. Every day I make a little dent in it, and I have these 3 Fall in Love Sweetly Japanese anemones that are great for late season blooms. I really love the color on these. So I'm gonna add these plants to my new well bed as well. This one is all budded up and we have some blooms on that one, so I think they'll add a really nice pop of color this time of year. If you're new to the channel or you missed my last video, this is where we created a new planting bed using the no dig or sheet mulching method to disguise a wellhead that we had over in this area. We placed a faux rock around it, and then that turned into me wanting to make a planting space to kind of soften that rock and of course to have more places for plants. And so that is where I'm adding these plants that I have in my plant stash. So the Japanese anemones are going to go in here. I also have this tray of the Blue Glow Globe Thistle. These are also known as echinops, and I started these from seed at the same time that I started the Pow Wow White coneflowers. And I have about 10 of them, and these are a beautiful sphere-shaped or ball-shaped blue colored flower. And I started these from seeds I collected from my own plants using the winter sowing method. And so I think these will also make a really lovely addition to this new planting bed. This is some of the echinops or blue globe thistle that I had growing this season, and you can see that it's all dried out now and I can collect seed from it. So I'm going to grab a few. Anytime that you want to collect seeds, you want to let your plant really dry out like this, and then it makes it much easier to collect, and then you know that the seed is mature because it dried on the plant like this. I grabbed a coffee filter so that I can sort through my seeds. I think it'll make it a lot easier to do it that way. And when it's time to store them, you want to put them in like a paper envelope or a little paper bag, somewhere that will be dry, because if you put them in a plastic bag, they can get moisture on them, which will sometimes cause them to mold and they won't keep as long. So let's go ahead and sort through these. Here we are. I was able to get a few seeds. These are nice and ripe and plump. So I'm going to go ahead and store them, and I can grow them again with the winter sowing method for next season. I actually got a lot planted in this bed today. So you can see the iris that I transplanted. I weaved kind of in the center here. So it'll bloom in the spring and then it'll just have foliage. So then all of these other perennials will sort of pick up and bloom, and they'll just kind of be hiding amongst the foliage. And then I also added these Japanese anemones. You can see these are starting to open up. This one is in bloom, looking really pretty. The coneflowers, the powwow white that I started from seed, I had 12 of them, so I have a group of 4 here, and I sort of weaved them all the way around this fountain. And the blue globe thistle, the echinops that I also grew from seed, I weaved right here behind the Matrona sedum. I went with height because that is going to be taller. The hydrangea is also going to be taller, and then it'll step down from there. So I just keep adding plants that I have in my plant stash to this area. I am really excited about how this is going to look next season. Now, the iris that I just transplanted today, there's a good chance that it won't bloom in the spring. Anytime that you divide and move iris, they take a little bit to reestablish themselves. So if you don't get blooms right away that first season after transplant, don't worry, they'll bloom maybe the following year. But that is part of the process. So thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.